What is up, everybody? It's Punter's Pod, episode 10. Can you believe it? Episode 10. Man, how time flies. It seems like just yesterday, Bucks was on episode 1 with me, trying to talk me into giving NFTs another look and trying to explain to me the value proposition with NFTs. And here we are 10 episodes later, and what feels like 2 years later, because what I'm learning about the NFT space is, time is very, very different. But without further ado, let me welcome a very special guest. We had to sort of push this out a week because timing and schedules got a little mixed up. But I've got Economist on the line. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, everything's going great. Just so everybody's aware, for obvious reasons, we're going to kind of do this as an audio only pod. I'll probably pop on from time to time, and I may do a little bit of screen sharing on the side. But just for safety's sake in the space and a variety of other reasons, we're probably just going to keep this to the voice. I'll pop on and off as we go. But so without further ado, let's dive right into it, man. I mean, so psyched to have you on. We've been following each other for quite a while, and I wonder how our stuff overlapped. I mean, I know you're into Bitcoin and stuff. Obviously, anybody who's into NFTs has some sort of crypto background. So you want to give the audience a little bit of a background just in terms of how you ended up in the NFT space, or what was sort of your path and your progression through Bitcoin, crypto, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So, I'm going to say some years, but these years could be off, so don't hold me to them. I probably originally explored crypto. It might have been 2013, 2014. It was right around the time that Mt. Gox imploded. And then I said, well, this isn't for me. And I kind of put it aside for a few years. Then I got into buying bits and pieces of Bitcoin probably in 2017. So right around that initial run up to about 18,000. And then when it, subsequently fell, I stopped buying. But, fortunately, I just never sold it. I just kind of held on to it because I figured, in time, it'll go back up. And missed the boat when everything was really dirt cheap. And probably December or January, so December 2020, January 2021, when Top Shot was really starting to become a little bit more popular, I started taking a look at Top Shot, and that was really my first foray into NFTs. It's just hilarious because before I really got into it, I think it was Peter Jenkins had tweeted about spending $10,000 for a basketball Top Shot moment. And I'm thinking to myself, why would anybody pay this? And I think that pretty much everybody goes through that, that feeling.
Yeah.
And then I started hearing about it, in some of the Discords I was in. Then I gave it a shot. And when I looked into it a little bit deeper and saw what they were doing, I thought, all right, well, I can see the value here. And, bought a couple moments, kind of let them sit for a little bit, then started buying packs and, was into Top Shot kind of right through the huge run up and then, the subsequent slow deflation.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting that you bring up Peter. I mean, he's quite a guy, and I guess there must be some overlap then with you in like maybe daily fantasy sports, or just knowing him from his. I feel like a guy like Peter now has multiple lives, like many of us probably do, But I feel like a lot of people know him not only for the Top Shot stuff, but obviously his CryptoPunk forays. And anybody who can claim to have a punk or. And I think he was involved in a punk with Levitan and a couple of other guys. I mean, those are serious, OG sort of, names to be dropping.
Yeah. So, this must have been years ago. So between fantasy football and, really not being very good at DFS, there's just that whole crowd that I used to, follow on a separate account on Twitter just to kind of get the fantasy advice. I heard him on a few podcasts. There might have been a podcast with like Fantasy Pros he was on. I forget, just but with all the fantasy football stuff,
Yeah,
you start to, follow a bunch of people just to kind of get advice and ideas and,
sure.
thoughts on, what you're going to play.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of where the bridge really started.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great to hear you say that, because for years I was mulling this idea over about doing like a bit of a crossover pod. It's just sort of just leveraging the guys who love to do fantasy, who love to bet on golf, but who also obviously either love to trade or are into Bitcoin and crypto. And then this whole NFT concept is, to me, is just like a natural extension of that. Now, part of what held me up, and I don't know if you've been able to follow along with some of the pods and some of the commentary that Bucks have I've been doing. I know there's a million different voices in the space, and just even keeping up with Twitter must be like, you probably need an intern just to keep up with friggin' Twitter, but a little bit of my hesitation stepping up to the plate with the NFTs was my sort of hangups with Ethereum, and actually you and I have chatted a little bit on the side about various things, and maybe we'll get into a little bit of that later. But I definitely, just to back up for a second, I love to hear that Peter and Top Shots sort of brought you into the space, because I feel like that's been sort of my pathway, and I feel like as many people as I've been able to onboard lately, a lot of them are coming from that same sort of genre.
Yeah. I don't know what it was about Top Shot. I actually know exactly what it was about Top Shot. They made it easy. And, that's always been, one of the things I've said is that Ethereum is very difficult to onboard new users because it's very confusing. Now I kind of forget about how hard it was to, onboard myself. I certainly wouldn't call myself an expert, but I would say that I have a good working knowledge of Ethereum. But if you're new to the space, especially new to crypto, that's really a very difficult, initial onboarding experience. You need an exchange account, then you need to buy the Ethereum, you need to send it to a hot wallet, or a hardware wallet, and then start kind of figuring out what you're buying, and then you need to make sure that you're funding enough, because you might spend $300 on gas and get nothing. So it's a very challenging experience. And what I've seen with some of these projects that have onboarded new people, whether it's things like VFriends or Stoner Cats, where you're onboarding people that aren't necessarily coming from, the crypto space initially, you always see all kinds of issues. Well, I didn't, what happened? I thought I bought this. Are you telling me that all my money is gone? Yeah. It's very challenging. And there are lots of people out there that are trying to do the best they can to create new user guides to really help the onboarding experience. And I think that helps. And, some may like this, some may not, but, companies like Coinbase that are, adding NFT exchanges does make that a little bit easier for these new users who are coming into the space.
Yeah.
Because they're, they have these fiat on ramps, and then they can just kind of do it all in one shot.
Yeah, I mean, you must have read my mind, because I wanted to mention that. I thought that was pretty big news out this week, and yeah, I think it just people may or may not be buying on Coinbase, but they have that in their wallet. It's one less step. You're not sending the money to your MetaMask, or you're not. And also the friction goes down. I mean, anybody who's doing this. Not just gas fees, but I mean, there's a bunch of different little ways that you get picked apart. Transaction fees and exchange rates, Ethereum going up, Ethereum going down. So I think the Coinbase thing is going to be a positive development. We'll have to see how that plays out in terms of how things are going to be listed, what things are going to be listed. Are they going to be taking market share from the OpenCs of the world? And while we're on the topic, any thoughts there, so we can brush over that and go on to some good stuff?
Well, I tweeted a little bit about OpenC today, and it's good to see that they made some changes to their mobile user interface. But one of my biggest things with OpenC, and I like the site. I mean, I think it's very easy to use. is you hear bits and pieces that make you feel like their foundation is cracking a little bit, especially with all the revenue that they generate and the funding that they've received.
Yeah.
And I feel, with Coinbase and Shoyu, if I even pronounce that correctly, and I'm sure there's going to be a handful of other sites that pop up, they're going to start to get a lot of competition really quick. So, my feeling is they need to really work hard to innovate, or they're going to be left in the dust. I think I made a joke, it was either today or yesterday, that they might become the Friendster of NFT marketplaces, because they might have been first, but if you're not pushing yourself to be better,
Yeah.
then you're not going to last very long, because there's always competition, especially in the space that's growing, that everyone is saying is going to be the next version of the web. There's a lot of people who want to get a piece of that action, and will be in it for the long term.
Yeah, and I mean, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think a bunch of guys were tweeting right around the time where the whole stuff went down with Nate, that like the only way to make this right is for OpenC to like do an airdrop and give back to the users. And I thought that was a pretty crazy and controversial idea at the time. Obviously nothing ever came of that, because I didn't receive any OpenC tokens. Did you?
Nope, nothing for me.
So, but did you weigh in on that debate? Did you feel like that OpenC was raking in so much money at the time with the volumes that they were doing the last couple of months that some sort of airdrop or some sort of give back to the users would have been a positive way to smooth the waters? Or do you feel like that's a slippery slope for any corporation, because then people are just going to be expecting handouts or dividends from time to time?
I mean, my whole philosophy was this, and this might not be the most popular philosophy, was well, I can certainly understand what he did, and how it could be viewed as being wrong, at least from a moral standpoint. But at the time, he certainly wasn't violating any internal company policies, which that's on OpenC, that's not on him. So I've spoken to him a lot, through the months. Can't even say through the years, through the months. And he had always been very helpful for me. And I know that I'm not the only person who felt this way. So I honestly felt, all right, well, you need to reprimand him and then do something for the community. And at the time, I wasn't asking for an airdrop. I was just saying, well, why don't you cut this, newly implemented OpenC fee for private transactions, make it 1%, right? Instead of the 2.5%, since you really are finding people. And, that 1% does go to cover your costs, because I don't think it should be completely free. Right. And then, of course, the artist royalties should have always been paid. And the fact that they weren't getting paid, that's, that shouldn't matter whether you're doing a private sale or not. The artist should always have been paid their royalties for trading their artwork.
Yeah. And dude, do let me know if there's topics or things that you don't want to maybe, necessarily comment on, because I understand, you've grown quite a name and a reputation in the space. I think it's even like less than a month ago, you had like 9,000 followers, and like you pretty much doubled that, and and well deserved, but I know with what's going on in the space right now, you do have to be really hesitant to say certain things or talk about certain projects, or, because there is such a shilly pump and dump type of nature associated with a lot of players in the market. And, keeping your reputation sort of squeaky clean is to the best extent that you can. It's very difficult to do. But I know, and I want to let you know that I've seen what how you go about doing stuff, and it's appreciated, because there is a lot. Yeah, like what I tell people that are coming into the space and that I'm trying to onboard is, dude, you got to be super careful. I mean, just like you would if you were buying Bitcoin, you got to protect your seed phrase. You got to have a hard wallet. You got to, what I mean? Like, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can get across to noobs is that, like, you're dealing with assets here. We may joke about trading in JPEGs, but at the end of the day, there's serious money at stake,
Yeah, it's funny. I just recently, cashed out, my first, bits of Ethereum back to fiat because, and I've said this, time and time again. I don't think that I'm the only person with this story, but I started with I think like $1,000, and a friend of mine, sold me a Zed Run horse for what it cost him to mint. Turned out to be a runner, and I flipped it for 1 ETH, and that's kind of how I got my start. But I had never cashed anything out, and it felt good to take my like my 15-20x on my initial investment, which is really just a fraction of what my current portfolio is. Yeah. But at least I feel like I've at least taken something out. So if it were all to go to zero tomorrow, which I'm not saying that it will, that I feel like I at least like from a normal investment standpoint, I certainly was able to to cash out something. But to your point, I try to be very careful about what I say. I mean, recently people are saying, "Oh, what projects do you like?" And my form response is, I understand that my words matter, so I try not to say one way or another. But I tell people my wallets aren't hidden. I mean, you're welcome to go wallet watch what I do. I have I have 3 wallets, for various reasons that people can see, like for my public trading. And you're welcome to go look and see what I'm doing and follow along if you want, agree if you want, disagree if you want. But I'm personally at a point where I'm trying to consolidate into the projects that I'm passionate about and sell off other stuff, which doesn't mean that those are bad projects by any means.
Yeah.
But there's just so much going on right now that I want to concentrate to really what I'm passionate about. Yeah. And if I sell something, it doesn't mean that I don't believe in the project. It's just not for me.
You got to consolidate. Well, it's not just about consolidating the portfolio. It's about consolidating your energy and your attention span, and how many discords you can keep track of, and how many announcements you can keep track of. And I mean, it's a little bewildering at times. I saw you did that tweet, and you know what? I was happy for you. It's funny. I joke with Bucks. You and Bucks have the Bored Ape thread in common, and I want to hear, that story, man, because that's just been one of the greatest stories, and I feel like it's a story that's ongoing every day and has yet many, many chapters to play out. But Bucks never sells anything. He's like a serial buyer, and people will joke with him like, "Dude, it's not real money unless you sell." And I love the guy. He's my partner in crime on the podcast. He ETH pilled me. He NFT pilled me. And but at a certain point, you do have to liquidate a little bit, just to sort of lock in some gains. It's like anything in life, I think. And being a diamond hander and having a long-term strategy is one thing, but being able to say like, okay, I've got 4 apes, I'm going to let one go, on the next run up, I'm going to sell into the strength. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice, by the way, guys. But I appreciate what you did. I saw that whole tweet thread that you did. And, and I also appreciated around that time when I was getting in, you were DMing with me a little bit, just warning me about, hey man, listen, like you're going to have run-ups, you're going to have crazy bull markets in NFTs. And then you're going to have mini bear markets. You're going to have deep winters, and you just gotta watch your butt, and on when you get in and what you're willing to lose and all sorts of stuff. So there's a great deal of risk and money management involved, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it best. You just have to be comfortable with what you're willing to lose. And here's the way I look at it. Anything that I have tied up in NFTs, I have to assume goes to zero. Not that I expect that to happen, but you never know what's going to happen. So if I want to de-risk a little bit, I will sell things and I'll just kind of keep it, in ETH. And I probably should move a little bit over to, to Bitcoin as well, just because I like to hedge.
Yeah. Diversify.
I've got my thoughts on it. I've got my thoughts on Ethereum. Not that I dislike the network, but I think that there are some features or flaws, depending on how you look at it, that could really cause some issues if we had a really massive sell-off. I think we've seen some fissures, so to speak, of what a sell-off can do.
Yeah.
And this is what I tell people. I say, if you think about what happened in around the MBS crisis back in 2007, think about how bad that would have been if there weren't circuit breakers. So in the DeFi space, in I guess what is it, the NFT lending space, there's no circuit breakers. I mean, things just get automatically liquidated.
Yeah.
And if you've got no one to stop the train, you don't know what's going to happen. And we've never seen that happen yet. And we probably see it happen at least once.
Yeah, well, I mean, and some of the issue with crypto trading in general is the leverage, right? And then the cascading effect, which it's great when we're cascading to the upside, but that those things tend to cut both ways, right? And you're right, there is no buyer of last resort in terms of like a Fed or a government agency that will step in and actually provide liquidity. I mean, and it's interesting. Like, part of what makes these markets incredibly fascinating and incredibly amazing and great is also what makes them pretty scary at the same time. And I would say the NFT market is probably just the crypto market on steroids. But anyway, why don't we take a little divergence at this point and say, so you kind of did like Zed, you did some Top Shots. Like, how and when did you find the Bored Ape Yacht Club? And was it something that you sort of quote unquote aped into right away? Did you sort of sniff around, do the due diligence, hang out in the Discord? Like, what was your sort of pathway to ending up in like what's turned out to be one of the preeminent NFTs out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was into Zed for a little bit. Then I realized it wasn't for me. Again, not that there's anything wrong with the project, but there's a lot of work to really make Zed work for you. And I just didn't feel like I had the time to really concentrate on that. So I sold out of my horse and, had the ETH to play around with, bought a few things here and there. And, through Top Shot and just talking about Top Shot on Twitter, I met a few people and, we started like a small Discord for, people who were within that community at the time. And, a few people were saying, hey, there's this project about apes. You should check it out. And this was maybe a few days before it sold out. And, I looked at it, I minted a few, I said, oh, these are kind of cool. And, I went to bed and then the next morning they sold out. And like, there was this whole buzz about the Bored Apes after they sold out. And I remember it was a Saturday morning. I was at my, my son was playing, like doing Little League practice. And I'm sitting there, picking up a couple apes. And, at the time, this was, and I think when you look at it now, it's really hard to imagine. It was the first project like this. And it's, at a time now where basically you get, 5 projects a day that are all doing the same roadmap, it's hard to imagine.
Right.
But, when you look at their website and you see where they said no FOMO ramps because, we don't like them, that's what they all were.
Right.
It's almost a meme at this point, but we'll talk about like the Apimon eggs, right? So those started, at a cheaper price, and then they're at 0.08, then 0.16, and 0.32, 0.64, and then they run up. Yeah. And when you get to like those higher price points, nobody wants to buy them because it's it's still a big risk and they're really expensive.
Right.
So when the Apes said that they were 0.080, like no ramps, like all right, well that's kind of cool. And the commercial rights were, that actually wasn't even really a sticking point for me when I first, minted them. I thought, all right, well, these are cool. I could use like a new profile. And then after they sold out, I bought a few more, I think like 0.15, 0.2, while I was at the baseball field and, trading them back and forth. They were starting to run up and then Meebits dropped. And I'm like, well, are these going to make it or not? Because Meebits are a Larva Labs project and, a little bit of uncertainty. And I certainly didn't hold everything. I was never without an ape, but maybe it was down to like 1 or 2 until I ended up kind of with the 2 that I call probably the ones that I won't sell. One which is my profile, the other one which is Jessica, which is the tweed suit female ape.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends who wasn't really into Ethereum or buying NFTs. He goes, well, I like these apes. Do you want to, go in on a few? And so we went on in a few, sold most of them, still have one left. And then another friend and I who's in the space, we're joined with one as well.
That's good. That's great. I that's another great thing about this that I like is like, Bucks and I went in on a couple of the fuck render crystals. I think the team buying, the partnerships, the fractional, what will probably ultimately turn into a large fractional ownership market down the road when things really take off. I mean, obviously they have taken off, but I could see further down the line, like fractionalization of like CryptoPunks or maybe even Bored Apes, as the values start to get pretty crazy. Those who have been completely priced out of those markets may see value in being able to become a part of the community just by owning a share of an ape, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fractional is a big thing. And I think there's going to be other methods too, where people will be able to convey rights that are associated with a certain token, short-term and long-term, that we just haven't even seen yet.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for not so much the projects anymore, but I'm excited for the technology and the underlying protocols that are going to help us utilize these tokens in new and exciting ways. Fractional was definitely one that did that. And, I think Fractional might have started from, a joke from the Club Top Shot podcast, when they, went in there was like that fractional, punk ownership, but it really is a good tool to have. And there's so many ways that you can use it. And I know that there's probably millions of ways that are coming that we haven't even thought about it yet.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to put a pin in that and do a little segment in a bit about the tech side of things, because I definitely want to know what's exciting you, because that's probably going to be the next thing. But so from there you got your apes, and I see you tweet like For Trade Friday or For Trade Thursday or whatever that is. I started to combine some of the things that Bucks was telling me with some of the things I was seeing on Twitter, and just understanding the whole rarity side of things, but then also understanding like the community side of things. Like, I feel like a lot of what people misunderstand about NFTs is about ownership, and how smaller groups of people or smaller groups of individuals can garner a higher degree of ownership in a small share project. Apple may have, and I'm just pulling a number out because I have no idea, let's say 10 billion shares outstanding. That's probably totally wrong, but or even Bitcoin has 21 million Bitcoin. And I love Bitcoin, that, and I'm a big proponent of it. But when you boil something down to a 10,000K supply, like the Apes, and you get to a 5,500 user unique ownership, unique wallets, I think that's probably where you guys are right about now. It doesn't take more than that to really get things going,
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's what gets missed a lot is, sure, there's technically unlimited NFTs, but there's a limited number in the projects that you want to be in. And, it's about community, but it's also about the project founders and what they're doing to continue to build value in those projects. And I'm not saying, all right, well, airdrop me tokens or airdrop me free stuff, but the brand recognition. And, that's certainly a big thing for me. I wrote a whole article about it, and, all you see with the Bored Apes is, it's merch. They're doing Ape Fest the first week of November. They're They're building a bar in Miami. They're looking to do more and more and more that we probably have no clue what's coming. And that adds so much value to the individual tokens. And then you tie it into the commercial use rights, and you tie it into projects like Jenkins, where, at least for their first one, their Genesis book, it's going to be about the apes. So, I'm very fortunate. I minted 2 Jenkins yachts. So, I have really 2 characters I can create in this Genesis book on what's arguably one of the top 3 NFT projects that's out there.
Yeah.
Which, I see long-term what that potential is. And I just really hope that, it comes to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, wow, there's so much there to unpack, but, and I want to get into Jenkins. That's one of my I got my little notes in front of me, and I definitely want to talk to you about that, because I read your Medium. I think it was Medium. I read your blog post that you did on Jenkins, and you even teased that a couple of weeks beforehand with a tweet about, anybody know about Jenkins the valet? And I mean, the fact of the matter for me was seeing what happened the weekend of the May C drop. Just really opened my eyes to understanding that if you have the right team that really is not out to rug people, but is there to build value and understand that, yes, the team and the devs, they want to get wealthy. They want to, who doesn't, right? What owner of a corporation or somebody on a board of directors doesn't want to, you're in it for this is all about aligning incentives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, they did the mutant drop, and the run up in the apes just into the drop, the drop could have been nothing. They could have just been psych, we weren't going to do anything. And all of a sudden you had a floor of 60 on an ape. I mean, that weekend, you got to admit, dude, that weekend was one of the most breathtaking things anybody's ever seen.
Yeah, it was a crazy weekend. And with all the run up, and that happened to also be the weekend of the initial Tom Sachs rocket launch, which, I attended. And that day that there was the rocket launch was the same day that they dropped the Mutant Serums. And unfortunately, I was away. I wasn't able to do anything. I'm thinking, wow, these Mutant Serums are 25, 28 ETH. I should probably just sell them. But then the prices dropped, because by the time I got home, they kind of unveiled what the mutants were. And then people, started selling it, because the cat was out of the bag, and then they went back up.
Yeah. But
long term, I think that if you believe in projects like the Bored Apes, and the fact that those Mutant Serums are deflationary, I think everybody loves deflationary and NFT talk.
Sure.
Well, the quick sale would have probably been the best move if you're looking, to kind of flip things, buy into new things. I think long-term holding those are going to be helpful, especially down the road. Let's not a month from now, but let's say 1 year, 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
Unmutated apes with serums, are going to hold a lot of value, because I think people are going to want their whole collection that's tied to it.
Yeah.
Because these are going to be in the hands of collectors, right? They're going to want to be all right, well, here's my ape, and here's my M1, and here's my M2 of my ape. But
I mean, we're seeing that with Christie's and Sotheby's and all that stuff, right? So, I mean, I think for you to take that longer term view and that collector mentality, I think there's 2 parts to this. I think knowing when to sell an NFT is probably the hardest thing. It's very easy to buy. It's very easy to have ETH in your wallet and be like, oh, I'm going to pick one of those up. But selling into the ramp, or knowing that exact right moment to get out, can be kind of tricky, because when these things start moving down, they really move down. You know what I mean? Yeah. But and this is something I've learned as a trader over the years in the equity and the options market, doing equity stuff, is you got to sell into the rip, because that's when you have liquidity there. That's when you have buyers that are basically scrambling hand over fist to buy what you have. Don't wait till the momentum's when the tide is going out. You're going to have a very tricky time selling, and especially in NFTs, you see what happens. People undercut the floor. You know, it's like a race to the bottom, and finding natural support levels like you would in the stock market is very tricky to do sometimes. So I think you'll always second guess yourself, like, oh, I should have dumped those serums when they were, you know what I mean? Like, right? Don't you find like that's probably a lot of what goes into the psychology of this, is like understanding buying and selling and beating yourself up sometimes?
Oh yeah, I mean, I do it all the time. But I've told people I would much rather sell for like 2, 3, 4x and see it go to 7 or 8 than see it go to 10x, net not sell, and then see it go to 0.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I'll just, my little anecdotal side to this is I ended up with a backseat because I realized like I'll never be able to afford an ape, but I really think that the Bored Ape community is so friggin' awesome. Like with that treasure hunt that they did, and all these ways that they,
which was impossible, by the way.
Did you? Why don't we take a little segue for a sec? Did you try to solve that? I mean, I heard it took a team of like 5 guys, and a couple of them were developers, like to figure it out.
Yeah, it took professional like treasure hunters and like puzzle solvers to complete it. Who actually bought an ape to complete it, and then I don't know if they sold it off or not, which is 100% fair, by the way. I mean, some people were complaining. I'm like, you're complaining that they did this, but tell me, were you really going to solve that puzzle? Because I can tell you right now, once I saw the answer, I certainly wasn't going to solve that puzzle.
Wait a minute. Wait, so they bought an ape, and the ape unlocked some of the clues? Or wait, explain. I didn't hear that part of it. I read through the post about how they went to the different rooms, and some of the rooms were red herrings, and they found other clues. And I mean, it was mind-boggling how they did it, but I didn't hear the aspect of that they actually bought an ape.
Yeah, so you needed an ape in order to participate, and I believe they bought an ape so they could participate, which is 100% fair. Like
that's fair. The apes are on the market.
Yeah, exactly.
When Time Magazine did that, Time Magazine did a whole Cool Cats thing, and they were giving away basically like 400 cool cats. They were giving away 100 to people that didn't have a cool cat, and it was a meme contest, and they were giving away 300 to people who had a cool cat. And I was sitting there like, I did a meme that I really liked, and I'm like, wait, like I have a 75% chance of getting one of these limited edition cool cats if I just buy one. Of course, I didn't end up doing it, but my point is just to overlap with what you're saying. Like, I don't see anything wrong with them going out to the public market and grabbing an ape to solve that puzzle.
No, absolutely not. But I mean, there was a group of us that were trying to go through it, and we were pulling our hair out, and then we pretty much gave up because it's.
It was crazy, right? They hired a professional gaming company, right, to like make and then other people were complaining that it only took the guys like 24 or 28 hours. But I was like, dude, that's probably pretty long in the world that we live in. You know what I mean? People crack codes. People can crack algorithms pretty quickly with the right technology. So I thought it was out there for quite a while, and kudos to the guys that won it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after I saw who won, like, all the answers that I was never ever
you're like, I was never going to get that.
Yeah, and I think most of the community kind of felt that same way. It wasn't just like some fun puzzle to solve. It was serious, but
it was.
But good for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the way they dropped it with just like having that, like the water stained like note at the bar, and that was another thing that I just sort of fell in love with, is like, you're not just talking about the art and the JPEGs. You're talking about like building a community. You're talking about creating environments. And this sort of ties into the Jenkins thing, which is that, and for those of you guys who don't know, like Jenkins, the valet is basically, it's an NFT project where, and dude, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but the way that I understand it is by owning either like a WAGMI yacht, or there are other lesser priced tokens that you can buy. But basically, you're by owning that token, you're allowing, or you're getting an ownership of getting your ape into the stories that are being written. Did I just totally bludgeon that?
No, I think it's pretty close. So they've got 4 tiers of tokens, and the first tier being the valet ticket, get to acknowledgement, and then the second, third, and fourth tiers get you that same acknowledgement, but it also gets you some integration into the story. And so it starts with the YUCK Key, which I believe gets you kind of like a Where's Waldo style, like seek and find. The valet stand will get you, I guess, into the artwork in the actual book, and then the Wagme Yacht will get you an actual character developed. Wow. And the one thing that they always say is, they're not minting any more NFTs. So this is not just for the Genesis project. This is going to carry on long term.
Sure.
So you're basically investing into the long term success of their writers' room beyond just the Genesis story.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then I think what the key is kind of separate and apart from the NFT itself is they're working on a compliant way to create a licensing agreement, where you can license. I mean, in the first story, it's going to be license an ape, and get paid a licensing fee, for that. And be very careful with what I say because I know that they're working very hard on making it compliant with all rules. So
of course, and again, like we were saying earlier, you have to be careful with what you say in this space because somebody of your stature says something on even a smaller podcast like mine, and somebody retweets it, or it becomes that sort of telephone game, and all of a sudden, like just a comment becomes like something that's set in stone, and it's like, well, how the heck did that happen? But anyway, yeah, all of this is pretty much theoretical at this time because we really don't know, But for me, besides the amazing aspects of the Jenkins project, I just love how they created. When I say we, I shouldn't say we. They created these pictures, 10,000 flat JPEGs, not animated in any way. And now we're backing into the stories. Like, you know what I mean? We're writing the stories in reverse. And like Jessica, like your ape that you've done tweet threads about before, like how being a lady and how you see the glass ceiling and CEOs and how the power structures work and things like that. I mean, there's like, you know what I mean? Like we started on a very base level, and all of a sudden we're really diving deep and exploring the personalities and the stories of these apes. I think to me, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of people who've been building, IP and stories around their apes. I think Jenkins is also like just a really great example, just a 4 ape that, you've built, they've built a background and a whole identity around him. And, you were talking about the poll that I posted, 78% of the people who I question, and again, that's certainly not a scientific poll. I definitely call it a straw poll because of the audience that I follow or that follows me. 78% of the people had heard of him. So that just goes to show you that when you build around one of these tokens, you really can create great things. And, one of the biggest arguments I get, that's the reason why I really wanted to tell the Stoner Cat story is, oh, well, not everybody's going to be able to generate, IP around like their individual tokens. And I think that's absolutely right. But when you have, someone like a writer's room project where they're basically doing the tough work of creating a story or character around your token, if you hold the right writer's room token, that is so crucial and so important. And I'm really excited to see what comes of it.
Man, it's fascinating. All right, so then branching out from the Bored Apes, you've talked to me about a couple of the projects that you're really into, that you're really passionate about, and we can maybe before the end we'll get into one of the projects that I'm really passionate about, and I'm not here to shill or in any way, but talk to me a little bit about. I know you had involvement with Gutter Cat Gang, right? And there's also Pixel Vault and the Punks comics. I mean, is there any and Ghosts I see you tweeting about? I mean, so like I don't know. I mean, I just threw out a bunch of names, but is there anything like at this moment that you're really just like paying more attention to or devoting more of your time to? And feel free to just let us know because I'm sure everybody's curious.
Sure. So like I'll go into those. I'll try and do some quick hits.
Cool. Awesome.
So I will say that Ghost is probably my favorite project that I'm involved in. Um, and that's something that I've said time and time again, and only because it launched right around the same time as the Apes did, kind of in that early May timeframe. And the way that Gong Yang launched the project, which was, hey, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to, sell my art for dirt cheap. I think his first one was $2. If you factor it in, I think it was like 0.000
Wow.
0.001 ETH. And to look to where they are today, he really, and Janet, his friend and partner, combined, the two of them really pushed that narrative of sell something cheap and bet on yourself with the back end royalties. And they've built a really good community there, and it's second to none. And it's hard to explain unless you've been immersed in it. For example, like this weekend, I was traveling and I, just jumped into their Discord, and they they run what they call the podcast there, which is basically the voice channel. And I jumped into the voice channel, and I was talking to one of the guys that's always on there because he's in Philly, I was in Philly, and he had tweeted, joking that I was probably in some suburb because that's what everybody says when they're in Philly. And so, we were talking about it, and at the end of the day, we all just really like the project, and we've all done pretty well. And I probably traded and sold more pieces than I should have, but everything has been for a good reason, on why I did it. And I still have my Genesis Ghost that I will never sell. Like, that is probably the one NFT that I can say with like 100% certainty that I will never sell, because I believe it's that special.
Just not to cut you off, but just before my guys get all excited, he's saying ghosts, not goats. Okay. He's saying ghosts. And no, dude, I've followed you on that, and I've clicked through on a couple of the tweets you've done on it, and just seen like the enormous value that's been built. And I mean, it's funny you talk about like giving stuff away or, starting from the bottom to build it up. Honestly, like, I've been in the Bitcoin community for many years, and I love those guys, and I'll always love them. But coming into the NFT community, it's just totally different. Like, the fact that people will put something in your wallet, or the fact that you'll be in a community where a guy's like, yo, I have to buy this NFT today. I need 1 ETH. I'm getting paid next week. I'll pay you back. And all of a sudden, like, the guy has like an ETH in his wallet. And you know what I mean? Somebody was just like, yo, sight unseen. Like, and I'm not saying there's like fairy tale stuff out here. A lot of it is building relationships and things like that. But, people do favors for one another. Like, people, I really feel like, at least, what I've been exposed to, I haven't come across a lot of the negativity and the scammy stuff, but I've just come across people that really just want to see it grow, and they want to build each other up and form good communities,
Yeah. And, that's certainly been my experience kind of early on. And, look, as it grows, you're going to lose some of that. I mean, I think it's just natural. But the people that I've met, kind of earlier on in that space, and, I certainly wouldn't call myself early, just kind of one early, not two. But, I've met a lot of great people in this space, and it's really, it's really changed my life. You mentioned, Pixel Vault, which, again, that's another project I like. They've gone on record saying that it's, an IP company, really first, that's leveraging crypto assets. And when you think about it that way, like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And, what they're trying to build. And, if you haven't been following along with I think they're coming from the Meta Hero Twitter account, where they're basically building the lore and building the storyline around the planets. It's brilliant. they're creating and building, and that's kind of where I'm at in the space right now. I'm not jumping into every new project that's minting. I'm going to start doubling and tripling down on the projects that I am passionate about.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that if I don't invest in it, doesn't mean it's a bad project, but like the ones that I'm passionate about. And I wrote a couple articles on on Pixel Vault, which gave me an opportunity to talk to the founder, and that led me to what I'm doing with Future Proof, which is that's where I'm writing from now on, kind of away from my personal medium, and what they're building there. And it's just funny, like every little step, like every little action that you take in the space can lead to something new and exciting, which is, I think that's why so many people are enamored by it. Is like one day you're just looking at pictures on the internet while you're taking a break from work, and next thing you know, you've just 10 or 100x'd on a picture of a goat.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, I would like to talk to you about your own personal notoriety. I mean, did you ever envision like that you'd have 18,000 Twitter followers, and you know what I mean, like, and be doing podcasts and things like that? Not like this is the big time or anything. I consider this like not to no pun intended, my own personal corner, but did you ever sort of, because I think that's another part of what I'm trying to preach about this NFT space, is that like it's community branding on a smaller level, and it's individual. You're almost, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, I feel like we're entering this like creator economy, this content-based economy, and this ownership economy where people just want to take own, like they want to grow and build things that they feel like they have a say in, because in so many other aspects of life, people have been disenfranchised.
Yeah, absolutely. I never would have expected this a year ago. I just think back to where I was a year ago, and it was certainly not this. And I've got some other Twitter accounts. I certainly won't name them here, and with like 50 and 100 followers. And I will tell you, Twitter's a lot more fun when people actually engage with you. Otherwise, it's just like talking into a void.
Yeah.
So I'm having fun, and I'm trying to do it the right way. I'm trying not to come off as scammy. I'm trying to. I generally want to help people, and if I don't know an answer, I'll just say I don't know. And I try and stay away from the really controversial things. I don't think people understand how hard it is not to get into arguments on Twitter and not to get blocked by people on Twitter, which if somebody's blocked me, I would have no idea. But, you always see that, well, so-and-so just blocked me because of this.
Yeah.
So-and-so just, stopped talking to me because of this. That doesn't happen. And I don't think people understand how really difficult it
is. It's hard to do. Well, it also takes a personal awakening. Like I used to get into that, and now I haven't had to block anybody. I use the mute button, or I just I just like ignore the comment. You know what I mean? Yeah. But you have to come to a personal level of growth to get there, because the trolls are always going to be there. People are always going to be sniping at you. And you know what? Once you say to yourself, and this is like an aside from what we're talking about, but it is, but it really isn't. But once you say to yourself, I just DGAF, like I don't care what people think, and I'm just going to go on the path of positivity. I mean, it sounds like enlightenment and Zen Buddhism or whatever, but honestly, that's the way I feel. Like I don't have time to be pulled down into the negativity,
I agree 100%. I come from traditional finance. I've been through that negativity. I see it every day, no matter how much I try not to. I mean, like I just had an experience on Friday. It was just a really rough day. And for those that don't know this, I think this came from like the old Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I constantly write tweets, I constantly write emails that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to send this, and I either delete it or just like ignore it. Well, Friday, I actually sent an email to like a broad audience, and I don't write in an inflammatory manner, but in the corporate world, it was probably a little bit taboo. And I told my boss, I said, look, he said, I write emails all the time that I don't intend to send. Because it helps me get to the ones that I do intend to send. I said, like, I sent an email to a smaller audience that was, a lot nicer than the one that ultimately ended up getting sent 20 minutes later. I said, look, I was traveling, my kids were with me. They probably hit a button and sent the email, and I didn't even realize it because I was giving them my phone so they would stop screaming at me. So that's like the first miss I've had in a very long time. But I think people understand, like, the brand that I have online is really the same brand that I have like in person. Although I might be a little bit more confrontational kind of in my real world work, because that's part of what I get paid to do. But in general, I try not to be inflammatory to people, because you don't get anywhere. I've had that in my life in the past, and it just doesn't work. So sometimes people say, well, you're just being fake. I'm like, I'm not being fake. I genuinely just want to help people and just tell them what they need to hear. Not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear in the right way. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, I did mute myself because I was pouring myself a drink over here. But sorry about that. It's always going to be tricky once you gather a following. I have 1/3 the following that you do, and I still have to measure my words every day. Because all it takes is one person doing some reckless behavior, and you inadvertently ruin their life. Even though you can put all the disclaimers that you want. You can tell people, like, do not follow my actions. All this is for entertainment purposes only. You know what I mean? So I think once you understand, as I know you do, that what we're doing and saying on here has real world consequences, I think you tread a little bit more cautiously, and you do things a little bit differently. And that's why one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. I always got that feeling. I never got the feeling that you were shilly or scammy. But anyway, we've got 5 minutes left. And speaking of shilling, so all right, I got to get to my moment with you. So I miss the apes. I miss the cool cats. I even miss the gutter cat gang, because probably right around the time I was getting into the space, like, gutter cats were probably like what, like 3 ETH floor. Those things have gone crazy. So anyway, I came to you a while back and I was like, hey man, I've got a couple of bucks that I'm willing to put into something, but I'm also willing to try to put my social capital into it, like get my guys into it, and do some community building. So I found the project, which is on the screen now, my goats, right? And what enthralled me, as I told you at that time, was this deflationary aspect. And it's funny because Vivek and Beanie were going at it a little bit today about why it kind of mimicked a little bit of the comments you gave me at the time, which was that, even though they're forging, they're not necessarily doing it like they're not doing it like technologically soundly. They're doing it sort of manually. Yeah, you had a lot of good things to say, and you had a lot of things to say just to be like, take your time and learn about whatever project you're going to get into at this point, because there's like 1,000 projects minting every day. And if you're going to get involved in something, make sure that it's something that you really want to be involved in. You gave me some really good quality advice. So anyway, not to shill you on the goats or anything, because I know you have at least one.
I do have one. It's still sitting in my wallet. I was looking at it today.
But I know you probably don't have much more than one. Vivek's been a big proponent lately. He's been coming, hanging out in the room. Not to get you to put you on the spot or anything, but have you thought about this project any further? Do you think like deflationary mechanisms are important? Do you feel like we're going to be able to achieve the objectives that I'm thinking about when I talk about like burning supply and getting, like by burning the supply down, we'll be able to get more unique accounts and maybe achieve something like BayC did a little bit easier? Like, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I certainly think that, a deflationary token, it's going to help with, prices long term. But I don't think we're seeing it yet. And this is anecdotal because I don't have any like hard research or anything in front of me. But things I've looked at that have been deflationary are the mutant serums, which I've seen, and like those prices have tanked, even though we're below 50% of those remaining. You've got pretty much anything pixel vault. Like, I won't even go into that because there's all kinds of game theory involved in there. But I'm a big fan of the deflationary projects. And I kind of parroted kind of what the Beanie philosophy is about the technology versus the manual forging. But I don't think that the goats community really cares, and I think that that's really what matters, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter today, like the technology side of it. It's it's what people are going to want to buy into and what people connect with, like from a profile standpoint. When I think about the technology side, I look at it deeper. I don't look at it in this cycle. I look at it past when ultimately there is going to be a bubble pop in NFTs. I mean, I don't think anybody is thinking that it's going to be up only forever. But once that happens and we start looking deeper into Web3, beyond just the artwork, the technology is what's really going to be what stands out.
Yeah,
because you can apply it to other things, like completely outside of artwork. So
metaverse.
So let's take an example, and this is just like purely hypothetical. So let's take, I know I just keep talking about Pixel Vault, but or even the Gutter Cat Gang, anybody that has a mint pass concept, right, where you get a pass, you can burn that pass, for a new token. I mean, that could be for anything. Let's say, for example, you're going to a concert and everybody gets a general admission concert pass. You get to the door, it burns your concert pass to give you your actual ticket, and then you don't get to decide like where you get to sit. It's randomly decided where you're sitting. So everybody pays the same price, and all of a sudden, some people are in the nosebleed, some people are sitting front row, like things like that. Just the opportunities are endless when you have the underlying technology beyond just where we're looking at currently.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that was a good one. I mean, people blow my mind every day in this space. I've never minted anything. That's a funny thing. Think about that. Like,
that's amazing.
No, think about that. Well, that's how new I am. And some people tell me like, don't do it. Like, like your life will be completely changed forever the minute you start trying to mint stuff. But the whole idea of the metaverse, and part of the GOAT's roadmap ends up in the universe, in the metaverse. Sorry, in the sandbox, and whatever the project may be. I mean, the idea that we're all going to be in theory in like Web3, we're all going to be existing in a metaverse, and we're going to have identities and personalities there, and in theory, we're going to have opportunities to make money there. Like from our tokens, like, and again, I don't know the mechanics of all this, but I know it's going there. I know, you see changes happen slowly. It's gradually, then suddenly. So anyway, dude, we're getting to an hour. I probably feel like I could do 2 hours with you because we didn't even I've got a bunch of sticky notes in front of me and we didn't even cover half of them.
Well, I mean, I can talk for a little bit longer if you want to. I certainly don't have an issue with that.
All right, so we'll go a little bit longer. So then let's circle it back because you made a comment in the top 20 minutes about how these days more of what you're doing is not necessarily focusing on a certain project, but you're really looking at the underlying tech, and you kind of hit upon a little bit of it there. But can you talk in like a little bit of broader strokes about what do you mean about the tech side of things? I mean, is it like, does it have to do with Ethereum solving the gas problem? Does it have to deal with different tokens that might do what Ethereum's trying to do better? Or does it have to deal with like metaverse and other, like, I mean, just give us a little, because I'd love to pick your brain on this because you're thinking on a different level, bro.
So I'm certainly not a tech expert. I am very fortunate that one of my best friends is a long-term developer, and I convinced him to start looking into smart contracts, just for his own benefit, to start, kind of seeing like different ways that you can develop for what's coming. And look, I know that there's a lot of conversations about Ethereum. They're already the winner, but I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. We talked about it earlier with OpenC. OpenC got complacent, and then somebody stepped in, and then like now companies are starting to step in, and they're trying to take their share. And you're going to see the same thing with other blockchains. I mean, you've got Solana launching NFTs, and I've seen some pretty decent projects over there. You have Flow, which always gets discounted, and I honestly believe that the reason why Flow gets discounted so much is that you can't currently buy their tokens. in the US and Canada. So I think that once that opens up, then you'll probably see some, very different things from there. But, but they continue to build. And honestly, that's the one that I think is going to give Ethereum the biggest run for its money, because Dapper Labs essentially started the Flow blockchain because they broke Ethereum with the CryptoKitties. So I think that there's a lot that's probably coming from Flow, and because of Top Shot, they did a really good job of trying to solve the fiat on ramp and KYC. So, I think there's a lot of things to be excited about.
So you feel like there will be challengers to Ethereum, like down the road, the dominance that it has. I mean, because like I bought this Cool Cats candy bucket thing because Riss told me to. Like I don't know, it's on Polygon. I mean, I'm like, why am I it's so weird. Like you get into this, like these tokens, like these. I don't want to say shit coins because I'm trying to get away from that terminology. But you get into these altcoins and it's like this sticky web that you like all of a sudden, like you're like, oh, I bought Ethereum and all of a sudden I have Poly and now I have Matic and now it's like, I mean, do you think there is a real like, one ring to rule them all? I mean, I said I've been trying to let my Bitcoin maxi friends know that if they had just, figured out how to build NFTs on Bitcoin, then that would have been the ultimate Ethereum killer right there. Like, anyway, we don't need to go into that debate right now. But I mean, as far as, in the space like Solana's or Flow, is that the one you mentioned? I mean,
the Flow blockchain.
Do you feel like something ultimately really takes Ethereum on? And would it be because of like lower gas fees, essentially?
Yeah, so Flow is already proof of stake, and again, I'm not going to try and explain the real technical details, but they have I guess different ways that they will draw consensus.
Sure.
And if anybody's bought anything on Top Shot, that there's no fees for the transaction. I mean, they charge their fees if you're selling something. And it's relatively quick. Maybe it takes 10 to 20 seconds to determine if like you were able to get whatever moment you're looking to buy. So I mean, it already does what Ethereum wants to do,
right?
And the issue is, I mean, it's currently a smaller blockchain. There's not as much that's been built on it yet, but that doesn't mean that people won't be building on Flow. And every day. You're hearing about new projects. I mean, you've got Sucibles on there. You have really what I'm most excited for is you're going to get non-custodial wallets coming eventually, and they've always said that once they get through like certain limitations in beta for Top Shot, that you'll be able to put them into like a non-custodial wallet. And I think like as all of that starts to come into play, you'll see really what it's capable of. And this is not saying that Ethereum is going to go away, but there's always going to be competition,
right? Which I think is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Competition on the Ethereum level, on the OpenC level, and all. I think any platform or any medium of exchange needs competition to force it to improve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And you're going to see some competition, and it's good. And everyone I think has become so complacent with Ethereum and gas fees that you forget. Well, there could be a better way to do this.
Well, I mean, a little bit of this goes back to that day when Ethereum was crashing, and you and I were DMing each other, and I looked at gas, and it was like $4,000 for gas, and I'm saying to myself, what happens to the person that like needs their money right then? You know what I mean? Like what happens? And this goes back to something you said at the top of the hour, like there's no circuit breakers, there's no one to ease the liquidity crisis that is occurring at that moment. And I'm not going to say the miners are simply gouging people, but it's a pay to play network, and I feel like Bitcoin handles all that stuff differently, but Bitcoin didn't want to solve the NFT problem, and I got thoroughly rounded out by the BTC maxis when I suggested that, winning the hearts and minds of everybody in the cryptocurrency space is about solving for all problems. It's not just about solving for payments. It's not just about solving for store of value, long-term wealth accumulation and fighting inflation, but like the NFT market is a real. What we're doing here is not only collectibles, but we're building communities. And just to poo-poo and shit all over that, pardon my French, is like, that sort of created a little bit of a divide. And I'm sure you've seen me sort of going through this a little bit if you followed my personal progression on Twitter. But it's, you know what I mean? Like, but because I feel like Bitcoin would have solved gas, because the Bitcoin transaction fees are simply just not that crazy, but they didn't want to make space on the blockchain for what they thought was just trivial JPEGs.
Yeah, no, I understand it. And, on the other hand, from a Bitcoin perspective, to have a blockchain that's really completely depegged from, smart contracts and NFTs probably also isn't a bad thing either. Because if you have hedges kind of on Bitcoin, and let's say Ethereum takes a bath, this is what I tell people. I said, all right, let's just assume that people are able to lever up their NFTs. And I'm not even talking about 5x leverage on NFTs. I'm talking like even if they lend 1-to-1. I come from traditional finance, so we're like when you're looking at collateral values and kind of how you lend against different types of assets, artwork is probably one of the hardest things to lend against, because it's a liquid.
Sure.
So that's the same thing that with an NFT. Like, it doesn't matter that, all right, on a given day the Bored Apes could be like extremely liquid, but there are other days that they're not. So if you're lending 1-to-1, and all of a sudden there's like a 10% like market price drop on NFTs, those are going to start to liquidate. And then as you start to liquidate and lowering the prices, it's going to create this cascading effect.
Yeah.
And then if NFTs implode, my bet is Ethereum's not going to stay at $3,500 a token, because Ethereum has kind of become known to be this NFT and DeFi blockchain.
Right.
So you see those protocols starting to implode, then the price is going to implode. So, I tell people, all right, are you prepared to see both your NFTs to drop 90% in value and Ethereum to drop 90% in value, which combined will get you like a 99% drop in value? Right.
And that's why we've talked about this, and you've told me, like, in a way, it's better that there's a firewall to Bitcoin from all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like, and again, I don't want this to come off as like some sort of prediction that, everything's going to be set on fire, because that is not what I'm saying. This is all hypothetical. But, if that were to happen, Bitcoin would probably drop in price too, because everyone's going to lump all the crypto the same way.
Of course.
But give it a few days, and as people kind of unwind what exactly happened, you'll start to see money flow back into the blockchains that aren't impacted.
No, of course. And I've done tweets about this, and I think anybody who's not asking themselves at least a couple times a day, like, what if I'm wrong? Or, what if my thesis is completely wrong on everything? If you're not doing that a couple of times a day, or at least at minimum a couple of times a week, then you're just living in la la land. I've lived through the .com bust. I've lived through the 2008 debacle. I've lived, to a lesser extent, the COVID debacle, right? So to think that there won't be potentially a time where there's just absolutely no liquidity in these markets and they're free falling, you're crazy. And I appreciate that you come at things with that point of view, because it's not just the rose-colored glasses that 90% of the people will wear in a bull market, no pun intended with your ape there with the 3D glasses, but you know what I mean? Like, and that actually helped me, because you gave me some sound advice as I was legging into the space, just to say, like, dude, you might be walking into just the fact that you're even coming into the market might be a top signal. You know, that like, you know, you never really know, you know, where the tops and the bottoms are and where when the winters will start. So I think all this stuff is really prudent to talk about.
I agree 100%. And, you know, my view is, you know, I'm very bullish on this space. And, you know, I think that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, money to be made and a lot of long-term value to be held. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that there's going to be a crash at some point. And I tell people, look, there's a crash that's going to come. I can't tell you when it's going to happen or how bad it's going to be. But, you know, I hope by, you know, putting out some pretty doomsday scenarios out there that it's not quite as bad as that. That's what I'm hoping for. I'd rather prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That's, you know, kind of my mentality. But, you know, that's what you get from, you know, nearly 20 years in the traditional finance space, mostly, you know, dealing on the credit side.
Of course. And
you prepare for the worst. Yeah.
Seeing things lock up. Yeah. And these are immature markets, you know, and also one thing you like rightly let me know right off the bat was like the amount of new project, the amount of issuance, you know what I mean? And for somebody in the traditional finance arena, like issuance is always a red flag. You know what I mean? It's because it's like at a certain point, it's like trying to drink water from a fire hydrant, right? I mean, how much new money, how many new entrants and participants and new money do we have in the market to absorb that supply? And it, you know what I mean? It doesn't become a scarcity question anymore. It just becomes a volume question.
And people say, oh, well, there's millions and millions of internet users and everybody's going to eventually want to have a profile picture in the metaverse. I said, yeah, I agree. But not everyone's going to be paying $5,000 for a picture of a cat or a picture of an ape.
At what price? At what exactly? Or a goat, for that matter.
Yeah, they might love it at $20, but they're not going to love it at 2,000.
Yeah, exactly. And like not every community is going to hit. And what I'm learning is you know you have shillers, you have people that pump, like you have pump and dump. There's a lot to navigate in the NFT space, and I feel like following a few of the more level-headed people in the space is the right way to go, rather than like, so for instance, like one of the things that I got into the weekend of Bored Apes was the On One Force. You saw it.
Mm-hmm.
It pumped like insanely, you know, and I could tell that it was going to pump even though I'm a noob to the space. So I bought like a floor one of those at like 2 ETH, which was to me was a lot of money. I'm like, I can't believe I'm paying 2 ETH for this. All of a sudden, the next day, the floor was like 7 because Gary V popped into the Discord, not to call him out or anything. You know, Steve Aoki bought one, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm getting at here. Like there are these situations where it's a perfect storm and everybody's coming in and the floor is pumping. And, you know, fortunately I got out at like 4, you know, I doubled my money. But as I learned a quick lesson that like as quickly as the tide can rise, it can go out.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
So, yeah, I mean, just protecting people from those things, which is what you tried to do with me, you know, and just letting people know, I think that long-term value can be built in this space if you're willing to put the time and the energy in. You know what I mean? I think steering people away from that get-rich-quick mentality is going to be super helpful for the space as it grows.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and really this like, you know, quote unquote, get rich quick. It's, you know, it's really all come from, you know, just kind of the explosive growth that we've seen. And, you know, I see people post these like, oh, this was 2 months ago. This was 4 months ago. I'm thinking to myself, well, look at how much price appreciation you've had in such a short time frame. And, you know, where does it level off? And, you know, does it start to drop? Does it continue to go back up again? Again, I'm not going to try and make some predictions and I'm not going to try and steer anybody anyway, but, you know, October is a very important month for me to see where everything goes. And it's really what's going to help me inform some decisions of what I do with my portfolio. Because look, I've been very honest. I hired a tax attorney. I've already started the process to start going through my transactions, you know, up to a certain point, you know, so I can kind of figure out like, what's my liability going to be?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's another thing that you've got to plan for. And, you know, I'm sure there are going to be a bunch of people who are just going to say, well, I'm just going to roll the dice here. But there's also gonna be a lot of people that say, I have a big tax liability I've got to sell off, because every time I sell something, I don't store it in ETH or stable coin or Bitcoin or whatever. I just buy more NFTs. So like that could be another major cause of a sell-off. You just don't know. I just try to think about all the situations that could help you see like either a big increase or a big drop off in value, and then I try to make my decisions based off that.
Well, and then the tax thing is something that people don't think about, and it's just like we got to talk about it. And sitting down and analyzing all your transactions and how much gas has gone in, and where do you stand net? A lot of people say, oh, well, if I just hodl and never sell, then I don't have any tax ramifications. I mean, look, there's a lot to it.
Which is almost true.
Almost true, right? Yeah, because
almost true.
Well, and even in buying and selling ETH and converting your fiat into ETH and moving ETH, I mean, there's, 6529 does like a ton of incredible threads on stuff like this. And, this is like one of the biggest rabbit hole. Bitcoin was probably the biggest rabbit hole I ever dove into. And then I would say like this is like maybe just as big, if not bigger. But I feel like putting guardrails on the space for yourself, like just like you said earlier, dude, like get involved in a few different projects. Don't try to get involved in 30 projects. Don't try to narrow your focus to something that you can manage on a daily basis, because on top of all this, we have day jobs, we have families, we have moms and dads, we have people that are growing older, and we have a lot of different things to handle on a daily basis. So I would tell many people that are getting into the space to just find a couple of things that you really are passionate about and stick with them.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And, I certainly don't always stick to that.
No, I mean, hey, look, you can do this and you can do that. And as you're more seasoned in the space, a quick flip here or there, I would never begrudge somebody for doing that, or just being able to do that. I feel like I'm not as nimble, so I feel like I have to maybe just put my stake in the ground in a couple of spaces. Like I said, I bought a Bored Ape Kennel Club. I've got my dog, because I feel like as I hold that, certain values will accrue to me that being a Bay C member, they won't be the same as having an ape. But in a way, I feel like the community there will want to take care of the kennel club owners, whether it's an airdrop or maybe a fun contest or whatever it is, I feel like that was a way for me to get a foothold into that community. And that was the entry point that I could get into.
Yeah. And I think that's important. And I think that above all else, the most important thing is not to shame people for selling, whether people are selling for a profit or even selling for a loss. One of my friends is, a market maker, and, one of the things I learned from him is, what, sometimes if you just sell for a 10 or 15% loss, it's self-preservation. Yeah. And, I'm all for it. I've sold stuff at a loss before. And if I would have held it, maybe it would have gone up. But if I didn't sell it, then maybe I wouldn't have been able to buy into X project that, made 3, 4, or 5 times what I would have made just by holding it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to your friend's point and to anybody's point with selling, a lot of times it's just about clearing your mind and resetting and not, sometimes something you're holding that just doesn't really fit with your approach at the time, or if the price action's working against you, it's just going to mess up every other thing that you're trying to do. And it's going to cloud all your judgment. So I would tell people 99% of the time, just dump it. Dump it. And unfortunately, this is what creates like the floor mentality. And again, I'm sure, we've watched it go both ways. Like I said, that weekend of the Mutant Ape drop, I've never seen anything like it where you saw a floor just moving the way the Bored Ape floor moved. It was friggin' unbelievable. And I'm texting with Bucks and I'm like, dude, what are you going to do? He's like, I've got one of my apes at 69.69. And, just to be funny, right? And, they never got there because it was fun. It was, oddly enough, like enough of you guys put 69.69 that there was like a cell wall there so nobody could get through it. Because I looked and there were like friggin' 12 apes there. And I'm like, guys, you're going to cap the price. But I think it got to 60, didn't it?
Yeah, it was in like the 60 to 65 range. And I remember watching it and I'm on like Roosevelt Island, just, walking around trying to figure out where the rocket launcher is going to be. Like, this is insane. People are texting me and tweeting and
and Steph Curry had got an ape. I mean, it's funny. I was joking with my wife the week before that. I was like, look, at 20, there was a floor ape at 22 the Saturday before that. I'm like, what if I just like liquidate some things that we have and I just buy this floor ape and see what happens? Because I could tell, how you can just feel like when the momentum is getting palpable, like when. Like you could feel that sort of craziness building. And sure enough, that 20 turned into 60 like a week later, But I mean, hey, look, we could all tell stories like this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I like to just tell the stories of, I'm doing okay. And, I certainly don't have any complaints with, where my portfolio is at. And, like I'm sure I'm going to have, quite a few portfolio watchers are going to see me sell stuff. And then they're going to say, well, what's wrong with this project? And the answer is nothing. It's just not one that I'm passionate about. And if it means I'm going to free up some ETH just to kind of put aside and have, whether it's going to be for taxes or just, saving it for a rainy day, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's it. Hey, listen, everybody's entitled to sell. Like we're in the GOATS Discord all day long. And me, I'm the cheap shill for goats right now because I'm just trying to help this thing not blow up right now. I just wanted to get a foothold right now. I think is an important point in the space where you just got to get a little bit of a foothold because there's so many damn things minting. But if somebody comes into the GOATS Discord and says like, guys, I got to liquidate like 3 or 4 goats, like we just help them out, like, or we just say like, hey, does anybody in here want those, and we don't like look at him or her with scorn. It's not, like this is real world money and this is people need to make real world decisions, so nobody should ever be shamed for selling anything. Right. And I totally agree with that point. If that's where you were going with that.
Yeah, 100%. I won't ever shame somebody for selling something because we're not in their shoes. We don't know their position and we don't know why they need to sell.
Exactly.
You don't know. Somebody might have just had like a really terrible life situation just happened and they might have expected that they were going to hold things and they had to sell it. I've seen it in the Ghost Discord, right?
Yeah.
People who love the artwork, love the project, but it has hit so much massive value that if they run into an issue, they have to sell, and it has nothing to do with the project. It's not that they don't like it anymore, but you know what, if you can clear $100,000 by selling your ghost or selling your ape,
they just need liquidity. Hey, yeah. and God bless them. Look, just as there are on ramps, there should be off ramps, and nobody should ever be held to scorn for selling anything, for any reason. And I think that's an important point. All right, well, listen, I again, it's an hour and a half in. Wow, this is one of the most amazing. This is living up to everything that I thought it would be, dude. I'm actually glad Bucks isn't here because he would have just been like drinking tequila out of a bottle and asking dumb questions. No, I'm just kidding, buddy. I love you. But all right, quick 2 minutes to wrap it up. What's your take on where we're heading with the NFT space in the next 2 to 3 months? Crypto the last couple of years, or at least last year, crypto had a friggin' massive run into year end. Bitcoin is way up tonight. It's we're at 58,347. I think if we crack that 60K level on Bitcoin, we might get some FOMO craziness. So are you, I don't want to put you on the spot with this because people might carry, look, you tell me how much you want to say, but are you short-term bullish, short-term bearish, wait and see approach? Like, how do you feel like into year end and maybe into the Q1 of next year?
I'm at a wait and see approach. I think for me, the biggest telltale sign is going to be like Ape Fest and NFT New York, because there are going to be so many people converging on New York that first week in November. And I want to see what happens, like what happens with those discussions. I mean, it's one thing to be like chatting on Twitter, but to have hundreds or thousands of people all together, like in the city, having all kinds of different conversations, you don't know what's going to happen, and it that's kind of like that inflection point that I'm waiting on. Like, I want to see what happens, and that's going to really help inform my decision of what I want to do.
Wow, that's a good one. That's a good point. Are you going? We're going to do a goats meetup somewhere and have a couple of drinks. So if you're around, I might have to grab you and buy you a beer or a Long Island iced tea or whatever. I don't know, whatever you drink.
Yes, I'm signed up for the conference, and I'm planning to be around for a couple days and nights. I live outside the city, so I'll probably be going back and forth instead of getting a hotel. But
you'll be around.
I'll be around. I'll have a really nice Uber bill, I'm sure.
All right. Well, listen. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I mean, not only for this hour and a half on this pod, but for all the time you spent with me in my Twitter DMs, helping me and helping everybody out there. Let's do it again if you get time. I'd love to see you in New York at the NFT deal. And anything you want to promote, or I would love, besides at Economist, everybody should follow him. Anything that you want people to just any causes or anything that you want to throw out there while we're here?
No, just just follow me on Twitter. Like I said, try to be fair and balanced, and I try not to shill anything. And and honestly, like, even when I talk about a project, like with what I write, I always I'll have my view, but I'll always share a counterpoint as well.
Yeah, you do stuff in a fair and measured way, and he can't be bought because I sent him a goat, and he doesn't really talk about goats. So
yeah, one last little thing on that is I've got Discord burnout. I'm in so many Discords that I realize I can't spend time in all of them, that I end up don't spending any time in any of them.
I can only imagine, dude. I can only imagine. We got Vivek to pop in the last couple of days. It was his birthday, and everybody was just over the moon. But honestly, it is just a genuine time suck. I won't lie to anybody. I mean, I love the community, and I would spend a lot of time in there. But at a certain point, you have to build walls. You know what I mean? Like, you have to because you have to run your daily ITRW in the real world. You have you have that life, and then you have your Twitter life, and so. But I think it's cool. I frankly enjoy being like a well-rounded individual, as it sounds like you do. But you always have to know when enough is enough. Oh, all right. Last thing from my boy Shada in the Discord. He wants to know, what's your favorite Philly cheesesteak? He asked me to ask you that. And he thought it might be a setup question, but if I don't ask this, he might be pissed off at me because he's a moderator in the. He's not only a moderator; he's my boy in the Goats Disc.
All right, it's a two-part answer.
Okay, here we go.
It will be Jim's would be my favorite on South Street because that's where I used to get them the most, because like that's where we would hang out when I was younger and living in the city. But if I had to choose between one of the big two, it's Pat's over Geno's. Pat's over Geno's. If I have to choose,
Pat's over. Okay, I got you. Oh, Pat's over Geno's. Okay, wow, there you go.
Between the big two.
So those are like the big guys, like the big sort of organization.
Yeah, so Pat's and Geno's are like the two that are like right next to each other in South Philly. When people think of cheesesteaks, those are the two tourist trap options that people end up going to. Got it. Which, when you live there, it's usually because you end up there at 3:00 in the morning because you're drunk.
Of course, soaking up all the booze.
But if I'm gonna just go and like have a cheesesteak just to hang out because like I enjoy it, like Jim's for sure on South Street, and there's some other good ones that I've had, and honestly, it all depends on just kind of where you are.
No, Jim said like I always want the insider like tip, like go here, like don't go there, so that sounds great to me. As a matter of fact, I just got super hungry. All right, well, listen, Economist, like, dude, I like I said, I think we could do this for like another hour and a half. This is now our longest podcast. I told you we wouldn't do this, but you made me do it.
I'm sorry that I made you go over.
No, man. Honestly, it's been a joy and a pleasure. And maybe we can get you back on down the road. Maybe we can do like a little round table with Vivek or a couple of the other guys and really just dive into the space, because I feel like I totally agree with you. There's going to be bumps along the way. There's going to be ups and downs along the way. But I feel like if we zoom out, like on a 3 to 5 year timeline, like NFTs are just getting started. That's my humble opinion. And there will be ups and downs along the way for the people involved. But we have so many people to onboard.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed this time, and I'm happy to jump on again. And in the meantime, follow me on Twitter, and you can now find my writing over on futureproof.xyz. That's where I'm writing now. I'm part of that organization for my writing.
Yeah, so give me that link. I'll put that in the show notes, dude. Give me that link. I'll put that in the show notes so that the people can find out where you're doing your blog. Is that where you're doing your blog posts and stuff?
Yeah, that's where it's going to be for the, for now. There might be some like completely unrelated NFT stuff that I'll post my personal one, but I would say like 95% of everything will be over there for now.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks again. We'll be following you on Twitter, and thanks to everybody for joining in, and we'll catch you next time on Punter's Pod.
All right. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, bro.